Hello, welcome to another review of Drones Visual. I keep saying that this year is gonna come loaded with nice surprises, so I ask you all to stay tuned because in the coming week I'll have more surprises for you. I have also mentioned that Eachine has been incredibly active releasing new products related to the world of RC and FPV, to the point that it's just impossible to keep up. I'm trying to be selective on what to review, and I think the Eachine Goggles 2 are a good choice because they offer nice, worthy of mentioning improvements from their predecessors, the Eachine Goggles 1, that many of you already know. So today, my plan is to do an introduction video of these goggles. We will go over the main components and features, what has been improved, and in future videos, I'll try to do a comparison and a more detailed testing of these goggles. So okay, let's then get started with the unboxing. As soon as we open the box, the first thing we'll find inside of it is the instructions manual, which I advise you to go over it so you can become well acquainted with your FPV goggles. If we continue examining the contents of the box, we will see this set of sponges that should make wearing the goggles more comfortable, and I will show you later how to place them. The awesome thing is that apparently we get two sets. In case we fail in our first attempt placing them on the goggles, we can try them a second time. So that's good news. We also get this tiny little plastic bag over here, which seems to be loaded with components. What I'll do is that I'll open this bag and I will show you all the components one by one. As with most Eachine FPV goggles, we get these wipes, a dry one and a wet one. You can use them to clean the frames and lens inside the goggles, and I will show you how that looks a little bit later in the video. This one over here is one of the two FPV antennas included. As you can see, this is a Motion FPV antenna, and let me tell you that the build quality of this antenna seems actually decent. As you can see over here, this antenna has an RP SMA male connector, so keep this in mind if you're planning to get some different antennas for your goggles. The second antenna we get is the so-called flat patch antenna, and again, the quality seems decent, although it's hard to tell just by looking at the antenna whether it's good or not. As you may expect, the connector in this antenna is also an RP SMA male connector. The next thing we get is this cable. At one end we have a 3.5mm jack, and then on the other end we have an RGB female connector. This should allow us to connect an external analog video input to our goggles, like an external video receiver, in case you have one. And here hopefully you can get a better look at the connectors. The cable is not very long, but I think it should be enough for what you need, and you can always get cables like this in any electronic shops. Then we got these sticky pads with a Velcro to secure your battery, and I will show you later where you can place them on your FPV goggles. The next thing we get is of course a battery charger, very simple one. If I recall correctly, this one is similar to the one provided with the Eachine Goggles 1. Let's get a closer view here at the connector. I think this might be a 5mm connector. I might be wrong, but you can let me know in the comments. And then if you're interested in the power output and the polarity of this charger, here you can get a better view of the specs. It seems like the output is like 1 amp. To power the whole system, we get this 2200 milliamp 7.4 volt lithium polymer battery, and if I recall correctly, again, it's the same capacity that the battery that comes included with the Goggles 1. A close view of the battery's connector here, and again, it shows that it seems to be like a 5mm connector, so please correct me if I'm wrong. To connect the external digital video source, we get this HDMI cable. Basically, this will allow you to connect any device with an HDMI output to your goggles, like a computer or a TV box or a smartphone if you have an adapter for it. The smaller connector here goes to the goggles, and the larger to your computer. And here we have finally the Eachine Goggles 2, the true upgrade of the already known Eachine Goggles 1. We got this strange bird logo here in the front, and the design looks decent. I mean, not a large deviation from the previous model. The material used to make the shell of the goggles is some sort of EPS derivative, and I think they have put some sort of a silicone cover on it to make it more resistant and maybe scratch proof. On one side, basically we have here all the controls. I think it's actually handy to have all the controls on one side, so you don't need to press one side of the goggles or the other. and also you have basically both connectors, the HDMI and the 3.5mm connectors located right next to the buttons and right next to each other. If we move here from left to right, we'll have basically the automatic frequency scanning button, then we'll have the video source input, then the enter button for menu navigation, plus and minus buttons for navigation and frequency selection within the menu. And I'll show you a little bit how they work later in the video. Then, as I was mentioning, on the upper section, we have the HDMI input that should allow you to transform your goggles into a home cinema. You should be able to enjoy movies or even work in your computer while wearing them, although I'm not really sure how many of you will be doing this. Under the HDMI input, we have a 3.5mm port, and as I mentioned before, you can use this port to connect an external analog video source like an external receiver, or you could also plug your headphones there in case you want to get that sort of full sound video immersion experience. The RP SMA female connectors on the goggles located on top of the goggles, they are sort of inside an opening. And I mean, this is good for protection, but it makes sometimes a little bit annoying to screw the FPV antenna there. It's not a big issue, but I'd rather have the connectors more exposed, although they will be less protective if they're more exposed. Then on the upper section, we have these sort of ventilation ducts, and during the time I tried them in these days, they barely got warm, but I guess during the summertime they actually might get warmer, so it's good to have some nice ventilation openings to cool down the system. At both sides of the goggles we have these indentations, if I may call them so. They sort of allow better grip when handling the goggles, as your hands sort of will fit that area, if you can see here. Then on the right side, extending from the same opening as the elastic bands, you'll be able to see the power supply cable to which you will attach the 7.4 2200 milliamp battery that comes included with the goggles. Then of course on both sides of the goggles we will get these elastic straps. They offer a nice degree of elasticity and their texture feels nice to the skin. The only problem is that I'm not sure whether it's going to be possible to replace them if they break. If we move to the upper section of the goggles, we also have an elastic band there that will you'll certainly need, as these goggles tend to be a little bit front heavy, so it's good to have that upper band, elastic band when wearing them. All these straps or elastic bands, they meet at this plastic unit that you can see over here that will rest on the back of your head. Here you can basically tighten or loosen the bands depending on the size of your head, and I think you should have no problem, finding the right size. I mean, unless you're a buffalo or something like that, but I think for most people it should be enough. And on the same plastic unit, we will also find the straps that hold the battery in place. Now, I strongly suggest you that you pick the sticky pads with the Velcro that come included and place them there, because basically the battery has no grip. So if you're using the goggles, there is some chance that the battery might slide out and maybe even disconnect. So you better keep an eye on that. If we move to the lower section, we also find those areas that will allow us to sort of a better grip when handling the goggles. And you can also see that all of them form sort of an X shape, like the X-Men goggles. Now, before I go and place the sponges here on this area, I would like to test a little bit the goggles to see how they feel, and to see what areas might allow some light to enter the interior of the goggles. I mean, just to get like a rough idea of what to expect later. Okay, let me give it a try now. Now, as soon as I started wearing the goggles, one of the first things that I felt is that I think I prefer the elastic band to actually cover my ears. It feels more comfortable to have them on top of my ears, but you can check that out later by yourself, whether you find that more comfortable or not. some ears might be too rebellious and would like some freedom rather than being under the elastic band. The Eachine band sort of feels nice. However, let me tell you that most of the weight of the goggles we've concentrated there on the front part. I mean, they're kind of light, but all the weight is concentrated on the front part. So maybe if you're used to wearing very light goggles, you might feel them initially a little bit front heavy, I would say. Now I think most of the light is entering through the lower section and the upper section over here, but this can be easily fixed when we add the sponges, which is the next thing I would like to do. I think once we add the sponges, there will be no light whatsoever coming inside the goggles. Placing the sponges on the FPV goggles, of course, is an optional thing, but I definitely recommend you to do it. Otherwise, they're not going to be comfortable. They will provide you with more comfort. They will also prevent light from getting in. And there's a large sponge that I'm placing now. As you can see, I have already placed a sponge for the nose. I also suggest that you place a sponge as well, because you will basically eliminate all light from coming in, and the goggles will sort of rest comfortably on your nose and face. So I advise you to use the sponges, although they smell a little bit like some sort of radioactive chemicals, but I think that's not a big deal. Now the next thing that I will do is basically go ahead and place both antennas. Now, if you recall, these goggles come with a mushroom and a flat patch antennas. Depending on what you're flying, how you're flying, you might want to consider different antenna choices, but well, these are the antennas included, so I mean, it's still a nice choice. I think you can fly racers and even airplanes with these antennas, although I won't tell about how good they are. I'm not an expert. So if we check the weight of the goggles, let me try to place them here on the scale. Okay, they have settled now for 342 grams. That's with both antennas and the sponges. And if we check the battery, what is it? It says around 88 grams. So basically, altogether should be around 430 grams. As soon as we connect the battery, the goggles will power on, and you may have noticed on the top left corner of the screen that it says the video input source. Basically, the video input source is displayed. Let me show you here again the corner of the screen so you can see it. Now AV, you can probably see it now. It's a bit of a challenge to record the screen. What I would like to do next is to power an FPV quad to check the quality of the image. Notice that at the bottom of the screen we can see the battery voltage, and we can also see the current frequency. This is really nice, and I think the Goggles 1 did not have this function of displaying the frequency and the battery voltage. So now you'll be able to see those in your goggles. If you would like the goggles to automatically find the available video frequencies, you just need to press the scan button, and the goggles will start scanning all the frequencies until they find a good signal. This might take a few seconds, but eventually the goggles will find the right frequency, and you'll be able to see your FPV video feed, as you can see here, perfectly. Now, let me warn you, if during the scanning the final transmission you get is flickering and not stable like this one, you might need to switch from NTSC to PAL or vice versa. That might be the problem. Okay, just make sure what your camera is using and fix that then in the goggles later. Now here you can see the FPV feed looking really nice on this large Full HD screen, and the good news is that you will get all your OSD information properly centered, and on top of that, you'll see battery voltage of the goggles, as I was telling you before, and the current video frequency. There's no cropping or anything like that in your OSD information. If instead of using the automatic scanner, you would like to change the frequencies by yourself, you also have that option. Using the plus and minus buttons, you can change the frequencies manually, and this could take some time, but there's also another method that might be faster to change the frequencies, and I will show you that method a little bit later in the video. To access what is the main menu, you can press the enter button on your goggles, and then you basically will be able to access the menu. As soon as we enter the menu, we will see the main the main menu here, and then we will see color, backlight, brightness, contrast, and saturation adjustments. And note that the OSD information will time out after a few seconds, but you can change that anytime you want. If we move to the second option, we can see that we can change from PAL to NTSC depending on what camera you're using. And if your image is flickering, you certainly should change. And then page A, page B, and C, I will explain you a little bit that later. The second option on the menu allows us to change language, position of the image, adjust the OSD, the timeout, and so on. And then if we continue, the third option, we can adjust aspect ratio of the image. We also have the overscan option that I will try later, and sharpness. And finally, the last option would be basically volume adjustment. You can navigate through all these options using the plus and minus buttons. If you press the plus, it will move one position down. If you press the minus, it will move one position up, and so on. So basically those are your navigation buttons. And then once you have selected the setting that you want to adjust, you press enter, and then once more use the plus and minus buttons to change the settings, and enter once more. Pressing the source input button will alternate between screens AV, AV1, and HDMI. Notice that if you change from one input to another, you will see on the left top corner of the screen the current input. Now, if you, for example, change to HDMI and there's no signal, you will see that the screen will turn blue in a few seconds, and you will see a message saying no signal. Now, remember that I told you that there's another method of changing frequencies. Well, this is a method here on the OSD. All those pages A, B, and C, they are basically groups of frequencies, and you can navigate through them quickly to change or to get to the frequency you want, especially if you know in what page is located. Using the plus and minus button, you can basically quickly move between frequency groups or frequencies and select the frequency you need. Now let's try to connect the goggles to my computer to enjoy this sort of cinematic experience they offer. First, let's connect the HDMI connector to the goggles here on the side. Then we'll go ahead and connect the other end of the HDMI connector to my laptop. Provided the goggles are on, as soon as you connect them to a computer, the computer will identify them as an external monitor. Depending on the settings you have, you might see an extension of your screen, a clone, or something else. The quality of the screen is really nice. I mean, think about it, it's a full HD screen, so really ideal for high resolution video. So that's really good news if you intend to use them sort of for that, to achieve that kind of cinematic experience. And if you actually would like to go for what I call the full cinematic experience, you can connect them. You can connect your headphones to the 3.5mm headphone jack on the goggles. It's really nice if you do that, and you'll be basically in a world of isolation inside the movie you're watching. And in there, if your girlfriend or your wife, basically they won't be able to disturb you. While testing the goggles, I found them very comfortable. And with the sponge, almost no light got inside them. I did a flying session with the Hobson H501S, and I was getting decent FPV reception in a radius of approximately 300 meters. I could not really fly much further with that drone, but I will be testing them further with other aircraft. There was no abnormal flickering of the screen or anything like that, things that I have experienced with other FPV goggles from Eachine. At this point, I'm really satisfied with them. I would like to do a second video testing them further and comparing them with other available choices, but I think they're certainly better than the HL Goggles 1, and I find them way better than the Eachine VR D2 FPV goggles. Except of course for the fact that the Eachine DR V2 FPV goggles, they have a built-in DVR, and these goggles do not have one. Now, to end this first part of the video, I would like to cover the most sort of relevant aspects of these goggles, just to summarize. First, something very important that perhaps I have not mentioned, these are diversity goggles. This should help us get better reception, and they will allow us to select between 40 channels. As you saw, they come with a full HD screen, which can be set to do different aspect ratios, 16:9 and 4:3, and the position of the image on the screen can be adjusted as well. The display shows not only the battery voltage but also the current frequency we have selected. They also include an HDMI connector for digital video input, as you saw before, and a 3.5mm connector for analog video input that could be your receiver or some other source. You will also be able to see all the information the OSD unit of your drone sends wirelessly without any cropping or any sort of distortion. There are various ways of selecting video frequencies. I would say 3 ways. Auto scanning via the menu and using the plus and minus buttons to manually select them, and the adjustment menu of the goggles currently comes in several languages as well. Okay, so this is the end of the first part of my review. If you find it useful, please give me a thumbs up and drop me some comments. If you think I said anything silly, go ahead and correct me. And in that way, we will all learn and benefit. Those of you interested in the topic of drones and would like to get the latest news and reviews directly from China, please subscribe to my channel, and I hope to see you all in my next video.